And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Jernigan versus Coffin. Step forward, please.
Airplane production controller Brenda Jernigan is suing her boyfriend's daughter, 23-year-old administrative assistant Crystal Coffin, for an unpaid loan to pay bills.
Ms. Jernigan, I assume that this is your boyfriend.
Yes, it is.
And this is his daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is your claim that you made a loan to Ms. Coffin,
Yes,
your
ma'am.
boyfriend's daughter, in the amount of $2,000, that she's made some payments on the loan, but she still owes you a little over $1,700. Ms.
Correct.
Coffin said she's never borrowed any money from you. She took some money that her father gave her, but she doesn't owe you anything. So tell me about this loan.
Okay, John and I have known each other for almost 5 years now. He is Crystal's father. We moved in together in September of 2000, and soon after that, in December, I decided to loan Crystal $2,000.
Well, tell me how that came about.
John kept getting numerous phone calls from Crystal about getting behind on her car payments and the rent and the electric bills and the water bills. So he didn't have the money at the time, so I decided that I would loan it to her. It took me a couple of weeks to
Just a
decide.
minute. At what point did she have a discussion with you, if ever?
I did talk with Crystal sometime around the second week in December 2000, and she just told me that she needed to get up to date on her car payments. She asked me if I could loan her some money, and I finally agreed a couple of weeks later to do so, and that's when her dad called her,
Why didn't you call her?
because he decided he wanted to handle things with his daughter.
Fine, step up. What's your last name?
Coffin.
Mr. Coffin, then you had a conversation with your daughter?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you say to her?
I told Crystal that Brenda could let her borrow $2,000, and that would help her pay her credit cards off.
What did she say to
Get
you?
caught up. She told me that would be fine if I could get it to her as soon as possible. So we went down. Brenda took the money out of her account. I took the money, took it into the bank in South Carolina, and deposited it into my daughter's North Carolina account.
Is that about right, Miss Coffin?
No. I called my father and asked him if he could give me some money because the house bills were past due. I could not afford to keep the house bills caught up because I was trying to keep my own bills, my car payment, and my credit cards caught up.
Well, whose house is it?
It's his house. Well, a house he rents in his name.
What do you mean he rents in his name?
I live there, but the house lease is still in his name.
But you live there?
Yes, ma'am.
With whom?
My younger sister.
How old is she?
She is currently 21.
Okay. So he moved out of the house and told you that you could stay in the house?
Yes, ma'am.
And you left the two girls in the house, and what was the arrangement with regard to the rent?
Well, I was still paying the rent at the time I moved out,
When did you stop?
probably a year later.
So you paid the rent on the house
And the
for a
electric bill.
year
And
while your
water
two
bill.
girls were living there.
Yes.
And when did you decide to stop paying the rent?
I got a job in South Carolina, moved to South Carolina. My son moved in with the girls, and they said they would take care of the bills.
So far, is that correct, Miss Coffin?
No, ma'am. My brother actually lived with my father for several months before he moved home. My father called me and asked me, will you call your brother and ask him to come help you? And I said yes. He was still giving money for the rent, but he stopped, and I took over paying the rent.
Okay, well, that's why you were living there.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So they were your bills. At that point, your father hadn't been there in some time.
Right.
And he had, in fact, paid the rent and the bills for a period of time, even when he wasn't living there.
Up to a point, yes, ma'am.
But then he said, now you kids are grown-ups. You're over 21. You're on your own. Pay your own bills.
Right.
And you got behind.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead. Let me hear the rest.
I asked him if he could afford to send me some money to help get caught up on the bills that were past due. He said that he would see what he could do. If he could come up with the money in some way, he would. He called me back and said that he was able to come up with $2,000 and that he would deposit the money into my account and that it should hit sometime the next afternoon.
Are you telling me, Miss Coffin, that you never had a conversation with Miss Jernigan about money?
I had a conversation with Ms. Judy. Yes, ma'am.
And what was the conversation?
She asked me to list all the bills that I was behind on and to tell her which ones I thought were the most important. And I said, well, the only bills I'm really concerned about getting any help with from my father are the house bills because the other bills are my bills.
They're all your bills. You live there. So you have to pay your rent. Now, what I want to know is, one gets the sense that you fully understood that your father didn't have this money, that the $2,000 was coming from Miss Jernigan. And I say that because you had a conversation with her about how much money you needed and what you needed the money for. But for the fact that you thought that perhaps she could help you with that money, why would you discuss your financial matters with a stranger?
My father asked me to talk to her about it
Why?
because he was going to try to get the money from her and she wanted to know where the money was going and what
Right.
it was for.
Okay. So you understood that your father didn't have the money and that if you were going to borrow the money, it was going to be from her.
I didn't borrow the money from her.
Why would she give you money?
I understood that he was going to get the money from her to give to me.
According to Ms. Jernigan, she's not even asking you for any interest. She received $230 from you. You have a balance of $1,770.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a note there, Ms. Jernigan, that you indicate in your complaint that the defendant sent you sometime in 2002.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to see it. It says, sorry about all the delays. I will try to send something every month from now on. Love, Crystal.
Yes, ma'am.
So?
That was last summer, I believe June or July of 2002. Brenda's mother had passed away and my father came down for the funeral. He told me that she was emotionally distraught because of all of the bills that had accumulated while she was not able to work, while she was taking care of her mother, and that she was giving him a little bit of a hard time about not having made any payments to her. And he came to me at work and said, I need you to give me some money so that I can give Brenda some money, just so that she'll feel a little bit better.
Good, that's a good thing that you gave her the money because you took it from her. And your apology is very clear. Sorry about all the delays because you didn't feel like following through. You owe her the money. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,770. That's all. Step out.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I was a little shocked that the judge saw it the way that she did.
If I'd have had the money, I would have loaned it to her.
My father is trying to make me responsible for his debt.
I was trying to help Crystal out in a time of need.
I'm thankful that my father was able to help me out in my time of need.
I would love to see all three of us get, but I don't know if that can happen.
This woman and I have nothing further to say or see each other for any reason.
I love my daughter to death, and I always will.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Martins versus Sykes. Step forward, please.
24-year-old engineer Jeremy Martins is suing his ex-fiancée, 23-year-old orthodontic assistant Keely Sykes, for the cost of a car lease. Keely is countersuing for the money she put into the vehicle.
Mr. Martins, according to what I've read, you and the defendant were either engaged to be married or boyfriend and girlfriend back in the year 2000.
Yes.
Were you engaged?
For a short amount of time, we were engaged.
And during that brief period of time, you decided to lease a car for her, and she didn't have sufficient credit, so the lease was in your name.
That's correct.
But it was clear, the arrangement was that this was her car, and she would be making the payments on the lease. Is that right, Ms. Seitz?
Your Honor, we did lease the car together, and he told me on several occasions that I had terrible credit, but to come to find out that I have not.
Don't get into your spin yet. Let's just stay with the facts, the basic facts. The car was leased in his name, but was for your use, and you agreed to make the payments. Is that correct?
My name was also on the car, too.
Fine. And you broke up when?
The summer of 2001.
And you were the one who drove the car from September of 2000 to August of 2001. And when you broke up, you took the car.
That's correct.
And when you left, you started your life anew. So what happened, Ms. Seitz? You had the car, and then you returned it to him at some point.
Yes, I did.
When did you return the car to him?
In November of 2002.
You didn't need it anymore?
I asked him on countless times if he would please sign the vehicle over to me, and he's kept on telling me that I had bad credit and that it was too much paperwork and things like that.
Just a second. In November of 2002, how much time did you have left on the lease?
I think about another 2 years.
Oh, you decided to buy another car.
Correct.
What month did you buy another car?
In December of 2002.
So, Mr. Martins, you got stuck with the car and turn-in fees, etc., and you feel as if she should be responsible for